meeting, where we'll be getting financial report from Eskom. Today, we will be having the minister who has to leave at 10:30 for a cabinet committee meeting, but immediately when he finishes, I think he will be away for a shorter time and will come back to the meeting. We also have the Department of Public Enterprises led by, of course, the acting DG, and also Eskom board members and the executive of Eskom. We have all those people who will be helping to take us through. Honorable members, without wasting time, let me ask Mr. Muchumi to provide us with any apologies.
Thank you, Chair, and first, the apologies I've received. It's the apology of Ms. Chabalala, who is attending the Section 194 committee meeting, and then the delegation from Eskom, as the chair has alluded, is being led by the minister. From the department, there's also the acting DDG, Ms. Mujisani, DDG for Energy Enterprises, Ms. Bungwadin, acting DDG, Mr. Nkadimeng. From the Eskom board members, we've got Ms. Fatima Geni, Ms. Ayanda Mafuleka, and Mr. Clive Leroux. And from the Eskom executive is the group chief executive, Mr. Andre de Ruyter, the chief financial officer, Mr. Khalib Kasim, the group executive for government and regulatory affairs, Mr. Tato Minyoku, group executive for human resources, Ms. Elsie Pule, the chief procurement officer, Ms. Jandri Sanka, the general manager for forensic, Mr. Chris Baloy, the acting general manager for stakeholder relations, Ms. Natasha Sitole, the stakeholder management, it's Mr. Mapelo Mvunelwa and Ms. Nombini Matomela. That's the delegation from Eskom chair and the department.
Thank you, Mr. Muchumi. Honorable members, those are the apologies and the bigger delegation from Eskom today, of which that is welcome. We will also appreciate the attendance of the board members of Eskom. Let's go to the minister to take us through and do his opening. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members of the committee and colleagues from Eskom and others that are logging into this meeting. The agenda of this meeting is about the annual financial results and report on the previous financial year. And you will see from that report that there are some areas of significant progress, but clearly there are some areas where much more work needs to be done, which is highlighted by the auditors in their various comments. The board and the management team will firstly explain an outline of the results and the commentary from the auditors, but then be available to the committee to answer any questions. The second matter, Chair, that I want to raise is a video clip that's circulating, I think, as of this morning. And briefly, I want to say the following. I think it's a well-known and undeniable fact that corruption has been a feature both in Eskom and many, many other entities across government, and of course the private sector as well, which has collaborated in this particular regard And that became the subject, in part, of what we know as the Zondo Commission. This corruption, as we have learned, is committed by individuals for their own benefits and sometimes network of individuals as well. And that distinction must be drawn between individuals and their greed and search for improper benefits through various tenders, contracts. And we all know that state capture in the formal sense might have ended, but corruption is still a scourge that we, both as Parliament and certainly as the shareholder in government, want to eradicate from our entities. And Eskom is no exception in that particular regard. And in this context, obviously, under the new board that was appointed in 2018 by government, then chaired by the late Jabu Mabuza, and you will recall that he was also the acting CEO for a while. A lot of good work was initiated to push back on and recover funds which were lost as a result of corruption during the state capture era. But what is important here is that CEOs of any entity, including Eskom, should not be involved in open political debates or assertions. And where they have political views, that's their private business. And they are welcome to express those views privately. But it is the responsibility of any CEO in any entity, as far as I'm concerned, to keep their focus on the job at hand and make sure that that is done as proficiently as possible. Clearly, lots of people have been reported to the law enforcement authorities for alleged involvement in one or other act of corruption or fraud. There's been a number of investigations. There's been a number of people who've appeared in courts, and there are a number of trials that are on the way as well. But one thing that we've got to do is to differentiate between suspicion or rumor and actual evidence. And if there's actual evidence, which is what the police try to establish, or any investigating authority, including the SIU, the Hawks, the NPA, then the law enforcement authorities should be made aware of that evidence so that they can act on it. The last point I want to make, Chair, is that corporate governance requires that the Eskom board must have a look at these clips. It must deliberate on this particular matter and report both to the shareholder and indeed to Parliament as well on the outcome of their deliberations. It's rather unfortunate that an important fight that the country as a whole is involved in respect of eradicating our institutions of corruption is now caught up in an unnecessary controversy, it would seem. That being so, Chairperson, I leave it to the Eskom team to make their presentation to you. And thank you for excusing me for a short while to attend the Cabinet Committee meeting. And I will certainly rejoin as soon as that meeting is finished. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Can we go to Eskom then?
Good morning to the Chair, the Honourable Minister Gordon, and all other honourable members. First and foremost, I would like to tender my apologies on behalf of the Chair of the Board, Mr. Mokwana, who is unable to attend today. I am filling in his stead. By way of introduction, I am Fatima Ghani Ahmed. I'm a board member and the chairperson of the Audit, Risk and Compliance Committee. This committee resumed office on the 1st of October 2022. To date, we have convened on 10 official ARC meetings, with the peak period being over December 2022, when the annual financial statements were approved just before Christmas. It has been a long journey for the business, the auditors, being Deloitte and the Auditor General, as well as the new ARC members. Firstly, is the issuance of these results were delayed as a result of the late appointment of the auditors, challenges experienced between handing over from the previous auditors to the new auditors, the testing of opening balances, which resulted in a restatement of prior year figures. There were delays experienced in stock counts in the generations unit particularly. The fair value calculation for derivatives and the effectiveness of hedges had to be recalculated and eventually outsourced to a consulting company to recalculate. And there were numerous findings and control deficiencies emanating from the lack of compliance with policies and procedures. Just to touch on the restatements, the material ones being the correction of the hedges for those financial instruments that I just alluded to, and then a reclassification of coal inventory from current assets to non-current assets. It has been a steep learning curve for both the new auditors as well as the business. And at the end of it, the audit opinion expressed was a qualified opinion based on PFMA information disclosed in the financial statements, a material uncertainty relating to Eskom's ability to continue as a going concern, an emphasis of matter due to the restatement of corresponding figures, events after the reporting period, and a new accounting policy on investigations and into possible corruption. Just to highlight some of ARC's conclusions, which can be found in the ARC report in the financial statements, we found there was a need for expert technical financial skills and strong business partnering. The systems and process of risk management, while they were effective and adequate, the effectiveness thereof needed to be improved. And the compliance requires continuous focus to ensure application thereof, in particularly to PFMA and contract management. The internal controls, while we found that the internal controls were sometimes lacking, there were compensating measures which were then adequate. Consequence management on an overall basis throughout the business needed to be improved, and there was a need for additional resources and skills in the assurance and forensics function. The assurance and forensics function needed improvement in its execution of its mandate and proactive addressing of control deficiencies by the business to prevent a reoccurrence of finding. The combined assurance model, while the first layer was effective, the monitoring and execution of controls at levels lower than the external audit needed to be enhanced. And we were satisfied with the quality of the external audit, as well as the independence and the objectivity of the external auditors. With that brief summary, I will now hand over to the executive management of Eskom, who will go into deeper details. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members. Thank you to the Acting Chairperson of Eskom for that introduction. Natasha, if we can please flight the presentation so that we can start with the sharing of our annual financial results. Apologies, Chair, if you can just give us a minute or so while we get that up on the screen. Natasha, we still can't see it.
Is it showing now?
Yes, please put it into presentation mode. Right, Chair, let me start so long while we sort out the logistics. We start off with a disclaimer, which is customary for presentations of this nature. So with your permission, I'll skip that and go straight to the second slide, which relates to the key points of our financial results, just to share some highlights. Apologies, Chair, we seem to be having some difficulty.
I'm on slide 3. I'm not sure whether you can see it.
No, Natasha, we can't see it. We just see that you are sharing your screen, so there appears to be some difficulty. Right, if you can try and put it into presentation mode, that will be great. We can now see the slide. Yes, okay, there we got it. Thank you. Honourable members, the key features of our results, I think, are quite clear. The EAF is reducing, and at the end of the financial year was at 62%. We have seen a further decline in that EAF since then. We have seen, as we are all aware, a steady increase in the days of load shedding. So this is a significant challenge. On the plus side, on the operations aspects, we have seen an improvement in the performance of our transmission and distribution performance. We have synchronized one new unit to the grid. We have also made operational one new build unit, and the defects correction process continues, those design defects that we have shared with this committee before. Our particulate emissions, a very important public health issue, that has come down. And from a people and culture point of view, we have been able to reduce our headcount to just a shade over 40,000 as part of our cost control efforts. I can just stress here that we are keeping a very close eye on key and critical skills, and where those vacancies arise, we fill them as quickly as we can, so as not to render ourselves exposed to a lack of skills. The income statement, regrettably, doesn't tell a very good story, except to say that we've seen a significant improvement, 51% improvement in our net loss after tax, which for the year was 12.3 billion rand. Our sales volumes were up. This is mainly attributable to the fact that we had a significant improvement in demand following the recovery of the economy post the pandemic. The balance sheet continued to strengthen within our limited constraints to address the outstanding debt. So at least the debt situation did not worsen. We repaid significant capital and interest during the year. And as is well known, the debt burden on Eskom continues to be a constraint on our ability to be a financially sustainable enterprise. And therefore, we look forward to the Minister of Finance's budget speech this afternoon. EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, went up by 61%. So that is a very significant improvement. And this is due to both higher revenue, but very importantly also to improve cost control as we get our arms around being better at procurement and also other cost elements in management control. Our operating profit, which is earnings before interest and taxation, so with other words, excluding, or rather earnings excluding depreciation and amortization, that yielded an operating profit of 238% increase over the previous year. what that means is that if we had a more sustainable debt burden, then Eskom could have been profitable thanks to these good results. An area of concern, Honourable Chair, that we again wish to bring to your attention is the outstanding municipal debt of about 45 billion. Since the end of the financial year, this amount has increased to approximately 57 billion, and we see a steady increase in that. So this is a very critical element that we need to bear in mind. We're grateful for support that we received from government to the tune of 31.7 billion. We are proceeding with legal separation, and we are engaging with various regulatory and other authorities, government departments, to ensure that we can operationalize transmission as quickly as possible. It is unlikely that we will be able to achieve the target date of April 2023, but we are trying to catch up on delays that we incurred during this process, and this remains a key focus area in order to deliver it. We do anticipate that for the end of the current financial year, ending in a month's time, that we will see a higher net loss after tax, and this is due to declining sales volumes, higher maintenance spend, and very importantly, higher spend on open cycle gas turbines, the diesel as well as fuel oil, as the performance of our generation fleet continues to underperform and to disappoint. Next slide, please. Natasha, your screen isn't moving. If you can go to the next slide. Natasha, if you can just give me a view on whether you can hear me and whether the slide is in fact moving.
It is moving.
Okay, Natasha, it's not moving on my side. Apologies for this logistical challenge, Honourable Chair. There we go. The slide has now moved. Thank you. So you can just go back, please, Natasha.
I'm in the correct slide. I think the network is delaying.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Let's focus on this one then. Generating plant and network performance. So as I've said, we've seen a decrease in our generation performance. We have seen load shedding, which has curtailed load by 0.71% of demand. While this may come across as a low number, we all understand the inconvenience caused to everyone in South Africa by load shedding. Our gas turbine usage remains very high. The cost of energy for both Eskom as well as the IPP-owned open cycle gas turbines came in at below 15 billion rand, which of course is a significant cost increase, as not all of these expenses are deemed recoverable by NERSA, and we therefore have to fund these from other sources. The Generation Recovery Plan and Reliability Maintenance Recovery Program continue to be implemented, but our energy utilization factor remains very high. And the energy utilization factor is as a result of a lack of available capacity. And we need more capacity on the grid, which will then allow us to carry out the maintenance to improve our energy availability factor. The major incident of Medupi Unit 4 on the 8th of August 2021, where we suffered a catastrophic explosion of the generator during a generator refueling, regassing exercise. That unit is currently still on outage and is expected to return to service by September of 2024. We successfully completed the outage on Koeberg Unit 2, and we remain well within the grid code when it comes to our coal inventories. The transmission network performed well, as I said. We have seen a reduction in the transmission system minutes that were not available. We also have seen that the distribution network performs well, but energy losses, including losses due to electricity theft, remain quite high. Medupi 1 achieved commercial operation on the 31st of July, so that was the final unit to be declared commercial, and Kusile Unit 4 was synchronized to the grid at the end of December 2021. So this is quite important because at the moment this is the only unit running at Kusile, and it's operating quite well. It is consistently delivering in the order of 700 megawatts to the grid. We have repaired all of the design defects at Medupi and also at Kusile Units 1 to 4, although we did suffer a setback when we had a gas air heater fire on Kusile Unit 5 on the 17th of September. We were able to claw back some of the schedule and negotiation with MHI, who are the contractors, and that has that unit will now be synchronized to the grid by July of this year. And again, that will contribute to alleviating the burden on the grid during a very important peak period. We are continuing to roll out our battery storage project, and then the World Bank approved the Medupi FGD extension. So all in all, with the exception of generation, a reasonable and satisfactory operational improvement. Next slide. Chair, it seems we are having some network difficulties, delaying the transition between slides. Apologies for that.
Can I suggest that members just open your own presentation that we received prior, hoping that it is the same presentation that is being presented currently, so that the GCEO just continue presenting. Otherwise, we'll end up having a time constraint. Can the GCEO just continue presenting? Members will also have to open their own presentation.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I think that's an appropriate suggestion under the circumstances. So if we can then do it, I think, Natasha, just leave this on your screen, and then we can continue with the presentation in order to save time. So if we then move, Chair, to slide number 4, which is the one headlined Operating Performance, Environmental Performance, People and Society. Our particulate emissions, as I said, improved. We did, however, have poor emission performance at Duva, Kendal, Letabo, Matimba, Matla, and Tutuka, mainly related to poor coal quality and poor dust handling and SO3 plant availability. Kendal emissions, you will recall that we have a challenge with the electrostatic precipitators and the downstream dust handling plant at Kendal. And as a result of an alleged violation of our emission standards, we are at the moment involved as the accused in criminal court proceedings, which have been postponed to this month. So the matter is ongoing. The Minister of Fishery, Forestry and the Environment, Minister Creasy, has established a panel to consider our appeals to comply with the minimum emission standards, and representations have been made to that committee. A decision is being awaited. We do still consume an extraordinary amount of water, 1.45 litre per kilowatt hour sent out. And this remains an area of concern where we need to improve our water efficiency. And we recorded a total of 65 environmental contravention incidents, the majority of which were water related. Chair, unfortunately, we have to report that we have suffered 6 fatalities in total, 4 employees and 2 contractors. Overall, our safety performance is still very good at 0.24, but of course, each and every fatality is entirely unacceptable, and where appropriate, we implement work stoppages to then have toolbox talks so that we can then ensure that we can refocus the organization and make sure that we can maintain safety for both of our contractors as well as our employees. Racial and gender equity continue to improve. We are now sitting at a very high level for racial equity at professional and middle management level of 81.68%. So we continue to drive transformation in the business. Disability, we were stable. I think we are still underperforming on disability, and we continue to connect more and more households, particularly rural and outlying households, to the grid in order to provide electricity. We have spent corporate social investment to the tune of 75.1 million, and contrary to popular belief, we do spend a lot of money with Black-owned businesses, and we were able to report a very significant improvement of more than 10 percentage points, and we are now sitting at 75.89%, which is highly satisfactory. We continue to focus on governance improvements. We continue to engage with law enforcement, and we are trying our utmost to bring this to a close. We are taking appropriate action against those who we find are involved in these activities, both on a proactive basis. We are improving our own controls. We are bolstering integrity, which is one of our values, compliance and governance, and we are implementing the following initiatives that are in progress. The first one is crime risk management. So we are conducting a full overview of the crime risk management landscape to combat bribery and corruption, financial crime, physical assets crime, cyber crimes, and potential money laundering. And then we will be able to have a program that puts us in a more resilient position to combat some of these matters. We are also in the process of establishing a single investigative unit, and this unit is going to be very important to harness synergies across the various functions that exist in Eskom in order to allow us to conclude investigations satisfactorily. If I can then move on Honourable Chair, to slide 6. We are implementing a business integrity function. This business integrity function is going to be very important to ensure that we can manage matters related to violations of our integrity on an end-to-end basis. And we believe that this will also allow us to conduct disciplinary inquiries and hearings more efficiently without putting managers at local level in an invidious position where they have to discipline colleagues and potentially subordinates where there might be matters that could impact on the ability to independently judge these matters. We are using information technology to improve our procurement systems. We have implemented price checks. We are implementing barcoding. We are significantly improving the procurement function and constraining the ability to procure from non-approved vendors. And this, I believe, will have a significant beneficial impact on our ability to continue to improve our procurement efficiency and further drive savings in the business. We're also implementing a Know Your Supplier campaign. There are a number of entities where we have challenges with organizations, private sector companies, where we know there are challenges with regard to corruption, and we are making very sure that we will properly screen all business partners, including directors, to ensure that we know who we are doing business with, that they are value adding, and that we can avoid any fronting that could potentially take place. And we believe that this again will be a significant improvement in our control environment going forward. With that, Honourable Chair, I would like to hand over to Mr. Caleb Kassem, our Chief Financial Officer, who will take you through the key financial elements of the annual results.
Good morning, Honourable Chair, Honourable members. Chair, I'll go to the financials. I'll take the direction as you've indicated. In the interest of the bandwidth, Chair, I'm just going to put off my video and then present. Thank you. So if we look at the slide that is titled External Audit Findings, Honourable Chair and members, the ARC Chair did indicate and highlight the key audit outcomes in terms of the PFMA qualification, the material uncertainty around going concern, and the emphasis of matter. If I look particular on what did the restatement mean for FY21, in particular, the fair value adjustment impact to those results was just under 9 billion negative impact on the income statement, resulting in the loss declared in that year to increase from just from 18.9 billion to 25 billion. And as the ARC Chair and the Chair representing the Eskom delegation this morning also indicated, the allocation or reallocation of the inventory between current and non-current. Effectively, what you see is that 37 billion that was all sitting under current initially in 2021 then gets separated into non-current of 11 billion rand and then current of 22 billion. Obviously, splitting that between current and non-current does have a significant impact in recomputing the current ratio, resulting in that reduction from what was originally stated at 1.27 to 0.95. Honourable Chair, if I just didn't touch on the PFMA information and the summary of the irregular expenditure, We started the year with the closing balance in 2021 of 37.2 billion. As we work through our records in terms of transactions that Eskom has conducted over a number of years, following the introduction of a loss control department in April 2021, you will see there's been a further adjustment to that opening balance of 22 billion rand for FY22. Chair, Honorable Chair, substantially that 22 billion is driven by two transactions in particular, one being for 11.7 billion, a Black and Veatch construction contract, and the other be comprising 7.5 billion relating to fuel oil emergency purchases over a period of time. That then adds up to about 19.2 billion of the 22 billion restatement. You will also see that the new incidents reported in 2022 was 300 million. I'd just like to highlight to the committee that there are still a number of transactions that are being assessed, and we do expect then that amount to be reflected in the upcoming financial years as we conclude on those transactions. If I then move to the next slide of the key financial indicators, as indicated by the GCE, following the tariff increase of 15.6%, as well as the recovery as we came out of COVID, a number of those financial indicators have trended in the right direction, resulting in your operating profit growing from 6 billion to 20 billion. And then if I just specifically just mention some key financial ratios, your cash interest cover improved from 0.85 in 2021 to 1.68 in 2022, which means that we are generating now enough to cover the interest. However, Honorable Chair, members, we are not generating enough cash from operations to cover the interest and the capital installments on our debt. That is why the debt service cover ratio is still reflecting an amount of less than 1 at 0.76, but it does demonstrate the improvement from the previous year's 0.3 of debt service cover. Positively, even in the graphic, when we look at our gearing, Eskom's gearing, with the support of the government equity injections over the last few years, and this improvement in EBITDA, reflects that the gearing has dropped from a peak in 2019, where the gross debt to EBITDA was sitting at 16 times. Last year was just under 14 times in 2021, and then dropping to 8.6. To get to sustainability for Eskom, honorable members, we would like that ratio to be at least 4 times and slightly less than that. And as indicated by the GCE, the announcements by the Minister of Finance later this afternoon would then positively contribute to reducing that key ratio even further. If we then move to the next slide in terms of some of the income statement items, I think as Andre has indicated, one of the big cost drivers we found during the year on the back of the generation performance was a lot of pressure on your open cycle gas turbines, higher volumes, and that attracted a lot more cost in terms of primary energy, as well as the reliability of generation resulted in much more higher fuel oil being utilized during the course of the year. That then culminated in the primary energy growing year on year from 115 billion to 132 billion, a 15% increase. Our other expenses for operations increased by 19%, but this is positive from a point that we increased repairs and maintenance by 1.7 billion year on year. We also had to take into account a 1.1 billion write-off for Medupi Unit 4, as well as making a 2.7 billion provision for compensation events relating to the Kuba power station. We have also taken a prudent approach in terms of the SARS diesel rebates, and we've written off 3.6 billion at the end of March 2022. Ultimately, this all culminates into, as the GC has indicated, the overall loss improving from 25 billion to 12.3 billion year on year. Honorable Chair, if I move on to the next slide, looking at sales and revenue in particular, the point here I would like to highlight, in most of the categories, we've seen an increase in volumes across the different sectors in terms of our customers. The important point is that because of IFRS 15, our customers, in particular the municipalities that we are struggling to collect from, we now have to recognize that on a cash basis, which meant that during the last financial year of March 22, there was 7.6 billion rand that Eskom could not recognize as revenue during the course of the year. And you can see that has been has escalated from 6.2 billion of the previous year, a growth of 24%. That is a key element that needs to be resolved in order for Eskom to place itself on a financial sustainable platform going forward, the rear dates, in particular municipalities. If I then move on to focus on a bit more detail around our primary energy and production costs. On the next slide, Honorable Chair and members, you will see that from a coal cost perspective, the rand per megawatt hour escalated year on year by 5% to 424 rand per megawatt hour, whereas nuclear costs have decreased by 5%. The pressure point, as I've indicated, has come through OCGT costs. Both Eskom's own open cycle gas turbine costs, that rate has increased by 19% year on year to 4,708 rand per megawatt hour. And if you compare that to the IPP's open cycle gas turbine costs, 4,574 rand per megawatt hour. That was an escalation of 28%. On the positive side, we see the trajectory of renewables average cost coming through with a decrease of 7% as more and more bid windows were concluded. We see those rates of renewable technologies decreasing. That then decreases the overall weighting of the renewable portfolio. And then on the import sides, there was a 10% increase. So overall, from a rate perspective, 11% increase in terms of the average production costs for the Eskom cost of production. If I then move on to the next slide, dealing with our capital expenditure and our repairs and maintenance. As I indicated earlier, we have increased repairs and maintenance to 19 billion in 2022, a growth on the previous year's 17.4 billion rand. This escalation has been attributable to all the divisions and in terms of generation, transmission, and distribution increasing year on year in their respective portfolios. And if we break down the repairs and maintenance of the 19 billion into more detail, we can see that 15 billion is attributable to planned maintenance and 4 billion was linked to unplanned maintenance. Looking at capital expenditure, with the support we receive from government and together with the growth in our cash from operations, we were able to increase capital expenditure to 30.2 billion, up from just under 24 billion of the previous year. And more importantly, that trend needs to increase going forward. Chair, if I move to the next slide and just to touch on the financial position of Eskom, we've spoken about the debt position of debt and securities of just under 400 billion. We have seen on the back of the government equity support that our liquid assets and our cash and cash equivalents have improved year on year, from a total of 18.4 billion in 2021 to 33.2 billion in 2022. But the pure cash at the end of the year sitting in the bank account was up from 4 billion to 15.9 billion rand. We remain focused on looking at optimizing our net working capital, looking at our stock and our inventory levels. Also dealing, as I've indicated earlier, it's important to deal with the rear debts that is owing to Eskom. Just then moving on and unpacking our net debt and our net finance costs. In the next slide, you will see that the net debt was 389 billion, and the gross debt was 396 billion rand. Specifically unpacking the finance costs, gross was 43 billion for 2022, taking into account finance income of 2.3 billion, and then the borrowing costs, which were capitalized, of 8.1 billion, leaves us with a net finance cost of 33 billion rand. Importantly, Chair, the point to highlight on the net finance costs on why it's also unsustainable. And if you look at our other big cost items in the Eskom's environment, number one, that is the second biggest cost item for Eskom. It's higher than our net employee benefit costs, and it's even higher than your capital expenditure, which is clearly unsustainable, and that's why the need to delever the Eskom balance sheet and reduce that finance cost going forward. Just unpacking what did we do with our borrowings and securities for the year. Opening balance of 401 billion. We raised 33 billion in the year. We repaid 38.9 billion, exchange rate movements of 3.6 billion, and other items contributed 4 billion to give us a closing balance of just under 400 billion and 396 billion rand. Average cost of debt was 10%. Average investment returns was 3.9%. Just moving on to the next slide, honorable members and chair. From a funding perspective, we spoke about what we raised and secured in 2022. In FY23, we're looking to raise 58 billion rand. We have already secured for just under 41 billion. We are confident that we will secure the remaining funding up until March. Just highlighting in terms of the government guarantees that are available to us to end of March is 28 billion rand. And just looking at the current debt maturity profile, you can see significant debt service requirements, in particular for March FY24 and 25 being significant numbers in the region of 75 billion for FY24 and FY25 63 billion rand. And that is why it's important we get to a position where we can then cover both the capital and the interest from an Eskom perspective. If we move on to the next slide, honorable members, the cash flow, all the cash flow is highlighting that if it wasn't for the government's equity injections, Eskom would have fell short in meeting its debt service requirements. And basically by having that allows us to meet those requirements. And more importantly, that we don't then trigger any defaults on our debt commitments. That's the main indication around the cash flow statement and that graphic that has been presented. If I then move on to touch on the rear debts, in particular municipal debts, I think as at March 2022, we have seen just under 45 billion. Currently, honorable members, that municipal arrears is sitting in the region of 58 billion rand, already growing by some over 10 billion for this financial year. We've been working with government to resolve the situation. Work is still continuing with the government departments to find a resolution and a solution for this municipal arrears. In terms of Soweto debt, that has decreased to 4.6 billion at the end of March 22. We did provide some write-offs for Soweto debt in terms of prescribed debt and in duplum interest. And if I touch in terms of other customers and two large customers that owe Eskom money, Transnet 437 million and Mozambique Electricity Company EDM owes Eskom 579 million, of which 350 million is in dispute. Chair, if I move on just to some segment information, looking at the performance at the different divisional levels in terms of generation, transmission, and distribution. All I want to highlight here is that if you look at the EBITDA, they are all positive, with generation producing 26 billion, transmission 9 billion, and distribution 13 billion. Other includes all your subsidiaries and your corporate accounts of 3.3 billion, giving you your group of 52 billion. But once you take into account again the depreciation and the finance costs, we see that generation produces a loss of 28.6 billion, with transmission making a profit of 1.6 billion and distribution 8.2 billion. There's an indication of splitting and allocating the assets between the divisions. Obviously, one expects that generation will consist of the highest value of assets of 545 billion, 79 billion in transmission and in distribution. Importantly, on the liabilities, all the debt is still held at Eskom Holdings and corporate. It's not allocated to the respective divisions. If I then move on to my next slide, just the outlook for March 23. The GCE has alluded to it, that on the back of a difficult operating environment and high dependence on open cycle gas turbines, as Andre has indicated, we do expect that the loss will unfortunately deteriorate for March 23, but that's really driven substantially by the higher primary energy that has come through in this financial year. If I then move on to the next slide, all we were trying to indicate here is what is allowed by NERSA in terms of open cycle gas turbine costs, what is recovered through the tariff, as well as what is recovered through the tariff in terms of the rear debt of municipalities and the growth. Point I just want to highlight here is that if we look at the shortfall between what was recovered in terms of the tariff and what was incurred, plus the same on the growth in arrear debt, effectively it meant for March 21, there was a shortfall of 9.2 billion. That has then escalated to just under 17 billion for March 22 from the two contributing factors. And the projection when we did this, Chair and honorable members, was reflecting a shortfall of 17 billion for the combination of diesel and arrear debts. However, as Andre has indicated, with literally a month ago, we spent much more on diesel, and the arrear debt, as I've indicated, has grown again. So that shortfall where we will land for March 23 will be higher than the 17 billion disclosed on the slide. Chair, if we move to the next slide, and I hand back to the GCE to summarize. Thank you.
GCEO.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. Thank you to my colleague. If I can just wrap up with one final slide. As the acting chair has indicated, the new board was appointed on the 1st of October. So there's been a lot of activity, lots of board meetings, lots of new initiatives in order to deliver on the mandate of Eskom to ensure reliable electricity supply. There's a lot of focus on the generation recovery plan, particularly under the new Board Operations Performance Committee, led by Dr. Mtetu Nyati. And we also have this the assistance of the National Energy Crisis Committee, which is very important and has been very helpful in enabling us to resolve some of the challenges that we've had. We are continuing to address the findings from the Zondo Commission. We are working closely with various government departments in order to improve our control environment. We, as Caleb has indicated, require a reduction in debt and improvement in our EBITDA margin to achieve financial sustainability. Load shedding will remain a risk until sufficient capacity is added. As I indicated in a previous meeting with this committee, Honourable Chair, we believe that from the beginning of calendar 2024, the outlook for load shedding will be improving as units return to service and as new capacity is added to the grid. Finally, Chair, the migration towards a cost-reflective tariff is important in order to allow us to recover our cost of capital. Otherwise, we will have to continue to borrow money to fund operating expenses, which is not sustainable. In this regard, the repayment of municipal debt and a reduction in our own debt levels will be very important levers to pull. Honourable Chair, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to present our financial results, and we are taking any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Group CEO. Honourable members, that is the presentation from Eskom. I just want to check before we continue if the minister is not here yet. Not here yet. Okay. Honourable members, let's go straight to yourselves just to make your contribution. As usually, we'll just pick up people one by one, starting from Honorable Mkwanazi.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hope I'm audible. May I be allowed not to open my video? The network where I am, it's really unsettled. Part of the presentation by the minister, I was in and out the platform. Chair, I want to strongly support what we have suggested in the last meeting, that we look on the issue of us attending physically, because I think the platform really gave us limitations and inconveniences. Secondly, Chair, I don't want to be tempted to discuss the issue raised by the Minister of the video clip by the GCEO, but I want to suggest to you, Chair, that can we put the timelines for the board to report to the portfolio committee by next week on the issues raised and on the issue of the platform of which the issues were raised. I'm really, Chair, not comfortable, one, on the way the issues were raised in that platform, and two, the issues itself that were raised there. But I just want to suggest to you and the committee the timelines of which is next week, because I think it is very important and very sensitive that we deal with that issue. Chair, may I just go straight to the presentation? One, can Eskom address the committee on the factors behind the decline in sales of volumes, and what are the I'm sorry, what are the Eskom intend to return sale volume for these customer categories? Secondly, Chair, is the issue of municipal debt. I understand the strategy and the committees that the matter is being discussed too, that the political task team can Eskom furnish us other intense strategies to deal with this matter, because for so long the issue of the municipal debt it's not being addressed. The presenter said it is increasing, and what are the lessons that they can take from the issue of Soweto debt that is decreasing, if they can talk to that strategy. Thirdly, Chair, from my side, is how far is Eskom in terms of collecting debt owed by Transnet and EDM? Fourthly, what is the status of Eskom application for diesel wholesale license as an attempt to reduce the rising cost of diesel? Fourthly, for me, Chair, if they can talk to the appeal with SARS to claim the diesel rebates that was disallowed over several years. Lastly, for me, Chair, is what is the Eskom turnaround strategy regarding poor coal quality and poor dust handling at the several power stations? Chair, that will be for me now, but if allowed, I will come back on the second round. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mkwanazi. Honorable members, I should have said that from the beginning. I don't think I will be in a position to give a second opportunity, not because I am just autocratic. It's precisely because of the time constraint that the sitting will start at 2, and it's a budget vote, there's a budget speech, and also that we normally have Wednesday session starting in Parliament at 3, but today it will be at 2. Therefore, we'll have to Honorable Kachalia.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, we've had 6 years of qualified audits and now material uncertainty as to the utility continuing as a going concern. Then I should say I'm going to make some comments and ask some questions. Then the CEO we have, against this background, publicly stating when asked by ETV if the utility was a feeding ground for the ANC, and his reply was yes. Also, his comments about the $8.5 billion that Eskom negotiated in large measure from COP26, and his comment about his concern about the watering down of governance, which came out of ministerial mouths. Then we have the board unable to meet its own EAF target. It's set within its own time frame. Eskom now reflects a net loss and projected even higher loss because generation is seriously down, and OCGT is seriously up, if you like, or usage is seriously up, despite a good stab at reduction of previous losses by the executive. In the income statement, I would say, is unimprovable through primary energy and procurement cost reductions. Then we have a CEO who now reports to the chair, or will report to the chair, and the shareholder representative. And this is at odds with corporate governance in general. Now, under these nigh impossible circumstances, the CEO and CFO have done what they can to reduce debt levels. But what are the solutions? Because that is largely the issue. Is government to take over most of the debt, as we understand we will hear later on today? And we need to know, in that regard, very importantly, what are going to be the conditionalities? They have to be tight, because particularly, given what the CEO has just said, in that video that's going around. It's something many of us knew, but now it comes from the mouth of someone on the ground, as it were, from his, as they say, lived experience. Furthermore, how is a broad national state of disaster going to help when Eskom, when a targeted Eskom approach is required that addresses municipal debt, the writing off, in this regard, the writing off of debt, and the talk of active partnerships has yielded pretty much next to nothing. What encumbrances, very importantly, in respect of localization, preferential employment, onerous labor arrangements, and BEE have been addressed and sidelined as required under these current circumstances? How is Eskom going to raise money in a roadshow when its interest cover ratios and performance against covenants has been dismal? How are you going to bolster ethics, compliance, and governance to root out, very importantly, fraud, corruption, and sabotage? And I'm not particularly interested in hearing about consultants that will be hired to develop a new culture and embed it in Eskom. We need something tangible and immediate, supported by government, who seems to call the shots, to deal with what was set in motion by the CEO, unless there are reasons not to do it, and then we'd want to know why. Now, we note an improvement in some of the financial indicators, profitability, in terms of profitability, EBITDA, and operational profit, but clearly sales won't fuel recovery, as 40% of the portfolio's debt is in foreign denominated currency. That presents a serious problem. Now, how are you going to deal with this, given the rand's volatility and its current position and future position, and the covenants, and the fact that cash from operations are insufficient to source debt and capital investment requirements, because clearly you need both. Under these circumstances, is there really any alternative for Eskom other than serious and aggressive privatization? I thank you.
The next member, thank you, Honorable Kachalia. The next member is either Honorable Mawotwe or Komani. I don't see on my list any of the two unless they change the gadget. Is there any one of them there? Honorable Mawotwe or Honorable Komani? Apparently, none of them are there. Okay, let's go to Honorable Kumede. Honorable Kumede?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, and greetings to everyone on the platform. Chair, I wish to say I fully support Honorable Mkwanazi on the issue of 8.5 because it brings quite a lot of distortions, right? And you'll forgive me, Chair, I've scribbled all over, so forgive me for that. I want to mention as well, Chair, that the restatement, not a positive sign for finances. It will be better that next time when the statements come, we don't sort of come with an issue of this nature. I'm as well interested to know why were auditors perhaps changed? Is there any specific or particular reason that it was changed? And Chair, it was my expectation that perhaps Andrew was going to sort of give just a little bit of a snapshot. Why change to stage 6? When are we out of stage 6? That in fact is very much killing. The water consumption, how much impact, I'm talking financially, how much is being sort of paid for such water for that consumption? Yes, government improvements, I think it's presented by, I think it's Kasim. That in fact, it's a good sign, provided it will help us close these gaps that we see with the behavior of many managements as well as officials. As much as we preempt in this instance, Chair, the government contribution may reduce significantly the repayments of debt, especially because the Eskom is being pressured. If there is a positive announcement from the minister, that in fact may give relief to the Eskom rather. And critical, Chair, is any assistance to communities to ease the pressure on load shedding. The 2023 will be a very difficult year, especially a loss estimated at 20 billion, the EIF declining to 56%, lack of generation capacity, the global fuel price pressure. How is Eskom state of preparedness or readiness to face all perhaps these kind of situations we are facing? And it's becoming clear, Chair, that diesel has now becoming a very critical factor in the electricity generation. The plan that we're giving extends to 2025, but the preparedness of the information we have is that there is money for diesel in 2023. Nothing is being said about 24 and in fact, as well as 25. Yes, the issue of municipal debt. We are currently at 45 billion. know that there is something that's being done by Eskom, but it is unclear how is that helping. In fact, if they could give us a better strategy that may begin to address the issue of debt. What are returns, in fact, of the non-core assets that are being perhaps sold? I understand that there are assets that are being sold. Will be interested to know. And may I say to the colleague, Honorable Kachalia, that privatization for us is not an option. I think you as well, you'll be the one that will help us fight the situation. Chair, may I say as well that there are 17 people that died because of electrical conduct. How can a plan to reduce such situation? 17 is too much. In fact, if we may try and address such a situation. Training at Eskom, you remember that it said it was suspended. It hasn't started. We may be interested to know because we are more focused on perhaps the communities. Chair, let me say Eskom states it's critical to get additional capacity of 4,000 to 6,000 megawatts. I'm sure that we will be interested as the members. How will Eskom try and secure or get the 4,000 to 6,000 megawatts for them to be able to continue with the maintenance as well as the repairs? May I as well, I'm sorry to say this, but I'm saying it because it is in fact depicted very much on the auditor's comments as well as the opinions. That when you look at all those findings as tabulated down there, you know what it says to us is that at times the management as well as some officials, they just run Eskom as a spaza shop. You cannot have such findings and no action is taken, in the midst of irregular spending that amounts to even the 14.3 billion as well. Currently, yes, it's 11.6, but it could be as much as there's a late appointment of the board. But the management, people that are always there, those are the things that in fact will worry us. A loss of 25 billion and currently is 12 billion. I just want to mention, Chair, how much is 25 billion if it can be kept in this room where I am? And then you say we are losing and you can't find that 25 billion, let alone the fruitless expenditures and all those things, which in fact for us, we are saying, please, let us be serious. I'm interested, Chair, to know if the managers or the management or some officials are not taking action to discipline those members. Is there the mechanism that on our side, especially with DPE, beginning to discipline those who were expected to discipline? Because if there is nothing that's being done, talk about the procurement. There is not even a regulation that's being followed. Any company is just given the way. The assumption that we'll have, Chair, is that in fact, they just give their contractors. If the management is not doing according to the books, and if I may say just corrupt, you will in fact breed even the ordinary lower people on the ground to be corrupt as well. So that, Chair, is the worry that we have as a committee. There is an instance where the shareholder, in fact, refused a permission to the board to add the additional members. However, when that request was done, the shareholder quickly configure the board. Then, hence is the new board that we have. That request was declined. However, they changed the board and they configure. I'll be interested how are board members perhaps chosen. We thought they are chosen on the basis of their skills as well as expertise. But it shows me that those original members lacked, in fact, a certain caliber to make them members of the board. Chair, let me wait there. Otherwise, there is a lot that a person can say in the interest of time. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Gumede. Honorable Buthelezi is here. No, Honorable Buthelezi here. Okay. Honorable Dlamini. Honorable Honorable Dlamini.
But Chair, this thing of Madlamini also.
Okay, Dlamini.
No, morning, colleagues. I think I don't have much to say really. Because whatever this presentation shows doesn't translate to the availability of electricity. We have 11 hours of darkness now. And the CEO that has just told the country that the ANC wants to steal that 8 billion. But he has never confided in us who are the companies that supply less quality coal and getting paid by Eskom, and chose to play into a political space through his utterances about how the people who negotiate with the World Bank and the investors use terms that were last seen in the 80s and whatnot. It then shows, Chair, that we are in a serious crisis if we have to read about these things in the media. When the CEO knows exactly fully well that he can approach SCOPA, there are bodies in parliament and in government that are there to fight corruption and corrupt activities, but he has never used any of those. He decided to go to the media to further his own agenda, which is not known yet. Maybe the proposed a body to investigate this will shed some light, but I am going to register my disappointment in the manner this matter has been shared to the public, because there are two pieces of legislation that were designed to protect people who want to make such disclosures. There's a Protected Disclosure Act. There's that Prevention of Corrupt Activities Act as well. None of which have been used by the CEO, but decided to go public, and I don't know to what end. And I'm asking myself, who benefits from these utterances? With that said, Chair, I'll reserve my comments. We are not getting anywhere with Eskom. It's still a crisis. We have a CEO who has resigned, but still working. I don't know why that is happening. I'm confused, to say the least. Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Dlamini, you done?
Yes, Chair.
Oh, sorry, the network is starting to give me problem. Okay, thank you, Honorable Dlamini. Honorable Malinga. Honorable Malinga, ubalekile. Ukhona nje. Honorable Malinga. Okay. Since Honorable Malinga seem to be experiencing a problem, honorable members, let us, because other members are unable to contribute, let me take it back to the group CEO.
Thank you, Honorable Chair.
I apologize, CEO. Chairperson, I think I'm part of this meeting, and perhaps it will be wise if you recognize me. This is Farhad Ishaq from the Democratic Alliance. Thank you.
Sorry, Honorable Ishaq. I don't know how I missed you because I've noted you here. I'm sorry so much. Come here.
Myself, Chair.
Who's that?
Did you call my name, Malinga?
I've called your name, Honorable Malinga, and then you in after Honorable.
Hey, you Chair.
No. Whoa, Honorable Malinga. You'll come in after Honorable Ishaq. Honorable Ishaq.
Thank you, Chair. Your apology is accepted for now. Chairperson, yeah, lots has been said, but I just wanted to elaborate on one or two issues instead of being repetitive, like some other colleagues have been. The CFO alluded to the debt service requirements and the cash flow. Now, my question is, how will Eskom mitigate this should they be faced with a further major catastrophe in breakdowns or emergencies? Surely the CFO or the board should have some sort of a plan in terms of how we mitigate this going forward, because obviously the grid is very unpredictable, as we all know. I wanted to raise again the issue of the diesel stocks. And I wanted to hear somebody elaborate on the stock of diesel and going forward, the plan in terms of having to pay for this sufficient diesel stock. The rebuilding of the coal stockpiles with winter that's looming now, not far off. I think this is also a major issue. Is there a concrete plan in terms of rebuilding the coal supplies? I'm not going to go over the cable theft and vandalism. I think that was covered. Then, of course, what additional capacity can be expected? I ask, can be expected to be added to the grid over the winter period? I know it's a difficult one to maybe just pin down, but perhaps a guideline as to what additional capacity can be added to the grid, hopefully over the next 3-month period. And then I want to elaborate on what are the non-core assets that the entity Eskom is considering disposing of. There is the issue on the business separation process, Chairperson. I'd like to get an update on that. Perhaps, if not at this meeting, then perhaps it could be given to us in writing in terms of the update on the business separation process. The SARS rebate issue, that was covered, if I can recall, so I'm not going there now. And then finally, Chairperson, yeah, the financial outlook for 2024 looks pretty bleak, and I think we have to be realistic about that. You know, the projections of some 20.1 billion rand loss is a huge worrying factor for this entity, and I think for the country as a whole, fiscus, etc. So that is more a comment than a question, but the financial outlook for 2024 remains bleak, and I've heard all the other suggestions and ideas, but yeah, perhaps I'll just stop there for now. I am grateful for the opportunity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Ishaq. Honorable Malinga.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Apologies, I did not hear you calling my name. Greetings to yourself, members of the Portfolio Committee, Eskom entourage, and our committee staff. Chairperson, I am not sure if these presentations are helping us in the current state of the electricity crisis that we are in the country. I want to concur with Honorable Gumede that maybe the GCEO, who's always on media talking everything else, if he can explain how did we get to stage 6. Chairperson, I also want to understand from himself that with the accusations that he has leveled of the 8.5 that was made for just transition, energy transition at Eskom, the 8.5, whether he has opened a case or is he also an accomplice to this corruption. Chair, I don't know, an entity that is struggling with finances continuously has irregular expenditure. How do they do that, Chair? Maybe if I can be clarified on that one, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Malinga.
Chair, may I raise a point with you? I want to ask you something, if I may.
Chair, you said there'll be no second chances. Please, we are late.
It's not a chance. I want to ask. I could raise it as a point of order, but I'm asking the chair if I may ask him something.
Yeah, no, come in on this section. But anyone want to speak must speak now before I give the GCEO.
Thank you, Chair Kaya. The previous honorable speaker made an allegation and by questioning whether the GCEO was part of the.
Not an allegation. He went on national.
I am speaking. Protect me, please, Chair.
No, Honorable Malinga, please, man. Continue, Honorable Kashadia.
And if those sorts of comments are made, then they have to be substantiated. And this is not the place to make unsubstantiated comments. There is a GCEO who has made a presentation on Eskom here, which has been dismissed out of hand by the previous speaker to say it is not helpful. I found it particularly helpful to help us understand the utility. And then there's an unfounded comment on top of it. I find this, I wonder if you think that this is not right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Whose hand is this? Malinga?
Yes, Chairperson, I am not making any unfounded allegations. This is viral. What I am asking is that how can somebody who has witnessed corruption keep quiet and not give us a case number? I'm not throwing any allegations. This is viral. He was interviewed and said the ANC is corrupt and wants to take the 8.5 billion. You must watch TV, Kachadi.
Okay, honorable members, can we agree with the process that the minister has committed himself to follow here? That the board of Eskom will have to take the process and then report back to the shareholder, and then the shareholder will come back to us when we meet as soon as possible. Can we agree on that process, honorable members, before we sort of having those touch kind of an approach? Can we go to the GCE?
My hand is up.
Who's that hand?
Chabu Mkwanazi.
What is it?
Chairperson, I wanted to talk to what you are suggesting, but I really emphasize the timelines as I suggested in the beginning, because we will be tempted to discuss the matter if the matter is not prioritized, because it is very sensitive and we are not drawing any allegations. We are discussing something that we understand and we hear very clear in the clip as Malinga is saying. So we must not be taken for a ride. So I really strongly suggest the timelines that we discuss the matter next week in our portfolio. Thank you.
Okay, I thought that as possible is related to that. Then by next week, when we meet, we'll have to get from the shareholder where is the process is. Thank you. Can we, when you...
Chair.
Yeah.
In us agreeing to this approach, because the third minister is still unknown, are we going to get to a point where we know this minister or not?
Yeah, that's what this process is supposed to provide us with. I think this process, after it has been engaged, the shareholder will report into this committee as to where are we in terms of that, who are the people implicated, where if there is anyone to be arrested, when is he going to be arrested, is all those kind of details as a way forward. Can we agree and we leave it there, honorable members? Thank you. GCEO?
Thank you.
Painfully, yes.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Thank you, Honourable Members. If I can deal with the questions raised, Honourable Makonazi, the decline in sales is attributable to two elements. There has been a decrease in sales due to the fact that we have load shedding. So if we do not provide electricity, we can't bill for it. Then also we have increasing grid defection that causes significant losses of sales, and that I think is an accelerating trend. And then also as we continue to see various challenges to the economy, that also depresses sales. Having said that, during the year under review, sales volumes were in fact higher than the prior year, and this is due to a recovery from the very low sales volumes that we had during the pandemic lockdown period. I will leave the financial questions to our CFO so he can deal with that. The process with the diesel wholesale license, we are making progress. We are in discussions with the DMRE or with assistance of the National Electricity Crisis Committee. We are dealing with poor coal quality. We are implementing significantly enhanced control measures on coal quality that is received from various suppliers, and in particular coal that is transported by road. That is where we have the biggest risk. We by managing coal quality and by ensuring that the coal that we consume is according to the design specification of the power plant, we are able to alleviate the pressure on dust handling downstream. But it is fair that we need to do more in terms of our environmental impact, in terms of emissions. But I would wish to draw honourable members' attention to the fact that our particulate emissions for the year under the review were lower than the prior year. So we have made strides in the right direction. The Honourable Kachalia raised issues with regard to solutions to the debt. I think that falls within the domain of the Minister of Finance, so I won't comment on that. On the solution of Munich debt, and a couple of members have raised this as well. Munich debt is, of course, a significant burden to the sustainability of Eskom. We have challenges with liquidity that are well known and well publicized, and the escalating municipal debt exacerbates that situation. However, the progress that we have been able to achieve has regrettably been limited. Where we have offered so-called active partnering agreements, and what this entails is that we go to a municipality that is indebted to Eskom, and then we offer assistance in doing improved revenue control. We assist them with billing, we assist them with doing maintenance, assist with the disconnection of illegal connections that obviously compromise the ability of the municipality to pay. But regrettably, Honourable Chair, we have only been able to implement, at last count, 3 of these agreements. So we are not making adequate progress. In other instances, we have had to resort to legal action. We have, for example, attached both bank accounts and certain movable assets. We understand that this potentially has an impact on service delivery, but in view of the significant negative impact on Eskom, unfortunately, taking those steps are unavoidable. The Honourable Gumede raised a question on audit rotation. Again, I will leave that to our CFO to answer. There's a very particular reason why that was done. But if I can deal very briefly with the reason why we are currently in stage 6 load shedding. As you may recall from the previous presentation, we have 3 units out at Kusile, unit 1, 2, and 3, owing to the fact that we had the collapse of a flue at unit 1. When this flue collapsed, it impinged on the 2 flues carrying emissions from units 2 and 3. That rendered all 3 units inoperable. That has led to a loss of 2,160 megawatts. We tend to return these units to service by December of this year, and we have already ordered the necessary steel as well as engaged with the contractor to commence the repair of this particular flue in order to ensure that we can return these units to service. We are awaiting a derogation from the Department of Fishery, Forestry and Environment to allow us to exceed during the time that we bypass the flue gas desulfurization unit certain sulfur emission standards, and we are receiving good support from that department. When it comes to Kuberg unit 1, that unit is currently out, so that adds a further 928 megawatts to the shortfall in generation capacity. This is a planned outage in order to extend the life of Kuberg by a further 20 years, so this is unavoidable. Kusile 5, while this plant was still under construction, this unit, we had a gas air fire heater, as I explained, and that has caused an additional 700 megawatts. Medupi 4, again, I raised this in the presentation, that's another 700 megawatts. And then we have, due to high ambient air temperatures in Lepalale, we have so-called vacuum load losses, which is due to poor performance from our dry cooling system that we use at this power station. We have an average load loss of between 600 and 1,000 megawatts at our Matimba power station. So the structural losses that we have that are baked into the current situation amount to over 5,000 megawatts. Now, if you then add to that the events that took place during the weekend, where we had the new Vol colliery, which supplies the Letabo power plant, not being able to supply us with sufficient dry coal, bearing in mind that there are significantly elevated water levels in the Vol River system. That then caused us to run out of coal on 2 units at Letabo, and that precipitated stage 6 load shedding. We have been able to avoid, for the moment, any higher stages of load shedding due to the fact that we have been able to manage our reserves, our diesel, as well as our pumped hydro storage. But the situation remains very tight and susceptible to further changes. But I can give the committee the assurance that the Eskom team is working very hard with a view to preventing that. The remark that the Honourable Gumede made on water consumption is spot on. We are a water-stressed country, even though we currently have a very wet season. But in the long run, we need to reduce our water consumption, and efforts in this regard are ongoing to ensure that we are more efficient in our water utilization. Diesel, we continue to procure diesel following an indication of support from National Treasury that they will make available an assurance to banks from whom we borrow money that we can in fact service those loans that we incur on a short-term basis to buy additional diesel. So for the moment, the diesel constraint has been alleviated. The unfortunate deaths due to contact with electrical wiring, that of course is absolutely tragic and something that we wish to avoid. It is regrettable that these incidents are due to illegal connections, where connections are made, open wires, live wires are strung in a way that is not safe. Sometimes naked live wires are strung along the ground, and particularly children are at risk. So this is one of the unintended consequences of electricity theft, and combating electricity theft and illegal connections will be a major factor in reducing electrical contact deaths, which of course we don't want to engage in. With regard to training at Eskom, we have significantly revitalized, resuscitated Eskom's training facility. We have an Eskom Academy of Learning that had become largely dormant. That has since been resuscitated, and we are now at a point where we are undertaking significant training interventions across all levels in the organization, but in particular for our generation management level, where we have had a backlog in training that has built up over the year. So this is an ongoing effort, and unfortunately, of course, we have to catch up on that backlog. It will take time, but I can give the committee the assurance that we are significantly paying attention to that. The issue of rebuilding of coal stockpiles, Honorable Isak, we are rebuilding coal stockpiles. I must just emphasize that the events at Letabo was not due to the fact that the coal stockpile was not in keeping with the grid code requirements. In fact, we were significantly in excess of the grid code, so there was not an issue of non-compliance with a requirement to maintain a minimum stock level. But this was due to excessively heavy rain over the Vaal Triangle, which caused the strategic stockpile to become waterlogged, and that caused a slurry to be created, which of course was not possible to burn in our coal-fired power station. I will leave the issue of non-core assets and audit findings to Caleb, and then just lastly say on business separation, we are making good progress. As I've indicated, we are likely to miss the operationalization date that we had set ourselves of April 2023, but I do believe that there is sufficient alignment amongst all the role players that we will be able to deliver as early as we can, and also with the assistance of the National Electricity Crisis Committee, who are going to assist us to remove any obstacles that may exist in that regard. Honourable Chair, with your permission, if I may now hand over to Caleb Kassim to deal with the financial issues that have been raised. Caleb?
Thank you. Well, thank you, Andre. Thank you, Honourable Chair and members. In terms of some of the financial questions around the SARS rebates, where we are, currently we're engaging with SARS's large business center. They want to do additional work and analysis around Eskom submission with regard to those rebates. So that process is ongoing, honourable members, and then we'll wait for that feedback before deciding on the way forward from an Eskom perspective. With regard to the rear debt, in particular, Mozambique, there's an arbitration process that is currently ongoing. We're waiting for that decision to then settle that rear debts with regard to the Mozambique amount that's due. I will ask through the GC when I'm done, maybe Mr. Bala, who's the head of distribution, can elaborate on Transnet and a bit more on the Munich arrears. If I then move on to the rotation or the appointment of Deloitte, following SNG cycle of 5 years, and they even had an additional year of 6 years during the Eskom audit, as per normal practice after that cycle, we needed to rotate the auditors. Following a open tender process, Deloitte was awarded, and it was supported by the Auditor General for their appointment. They will now progress with the second year in terms of the audit of Eskom. If I then deal with OCGTs, that's a key point, and it also affects the outlook not only for March 23, but like some of the members asked, what about FY 24 and 25? If I just bring that, obviously that is on the back of the generation performance and the EAF, and that needs to be dealt with together with additional capacity. But it comes down to how will that be paid for? In terms of, firstly, we apply to the regulator for diesel requirements based on a production forecast. In the latest decision of the regulator, Eskom asked for a 12% load factor. We were granted recovery of a 6% load factor for FY 24 and 25, effectively half of what we requested. So in terms of rand amounts, we've asked for 16 billion in both those years for 24 and 25, and we were awarded around 8 billion rand for both years. I think in FY 25, it's close to 9 billion rand. If I just use that relative to what we spent to date for FY 23, we've already touched on 20 billion rand now halfway through February. Most likely we're looking at maybe another 2.5 billion to get towards the end of March. So honorable members, what it does mean is if that similar utilization, assuming similar prices of the commodity and we incur the load factors as indicated, there is a gap of around 12 billion for the next 2 years, which then affects your bottom line. And as I indicated, I think in the third last slide, if you can't recognize the revenue from municipalities, and that's we've seen come through at an average amount, as I disclosed in the financials, of around 7 billion, you already come back very quickly to a gap of around 20 billion. And that is why those two factors are very instrumental to Eskom's outlook and its financial performance going forward. On the irregular expenditure and accompany with our financial performance and why are we still incurring irregular expenditure, I think the one fact we do see that the trend is in the right direction. The number of incidents of irregular has reduced significantly. Also, the values attached to irregular contracts that are coming through or are incurred are much smaller. And one way Eskom is working to mitigate and prevent irregular expenditure going forward, we're busy with an automation process for our procurement system. That does not mean that automation is foolproof, but we believe that will contribute significantly. But if I just link it to one of the members' comments, it really comes down, and even the ARC chairs indicate the discipline around management, around staff, in just applying the policies and procedures. And even through the audit, there's no issue from the policies and procedures that are lacking in Eskom. It's just compliance and discipline and monitoring by management of these procedures, and we need to ensure that gets implemented and the necessary consequence management taken on that. If I didn't talk about sale of non-core assets, we are looking at two particular assets of Eskom. One is the Eskom Finance Company, which is basically the subsidiary that offers housing loans to our staff. We're busy with that process. And in terms of our property portfolio, all the non-core property that doesn't relate to generation, transmission, and distribution, we're working on a disposal process for that, to monetize that. Obviously, also taking into account the leasing initiative that Eskom has implemented. That's from the non-core asset side. I'm just looking. So I think those are the big questions from a financial perspective, Andre, that I wanted to answer. Maybe Monda can elaborate on Transnet and the arrear debts. Thanks. Thank you, Chair, honorable members.
Monday, please.
GCO?
Honorable Chair, it seems that Mr. Bala is not on the call. Apologies for that. If I can then deal with some of the issues raised. The outstanding debt from EDM and from Transnet, if you can just give me a second.
Sorry, Andre?
Oh, all right, there you are.
Sorry, I'm here. My apologies, I was battling with the mic. So yeah, I think Caleb spoke about the CFO spoke about the outstanding debt from EDM, but from Transnet, the debt in question is they've got nothing outstanding on in terms of arrear debt. The amount that of the 230 million is an amount that is in dispute. That is currently the amount that we are in arbitration with Transnet. The arbitration was supposed to sit in February. Yeah, unfortunately, due to issues beyond our control, the arbitration could not sit in February. It has been postponed to a later date. We're waiting for the date for that arbitration. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything else I might have missed. Thanks, Andre.
Thank you, Mona. Do you want to say anything about municipal debt and some of the steps that we are taking? If you can elaborate on what I said earlier, please.
Yeah, no. So in terms of the municipal debt, I think you've touched on, Andre, on the issue of the active partnering that we have put as a program to support the municipalities. In our assessment, quite a number of the municipalities in question, they've got some challenges that make them unable to pay. So with those, we try to the best of our ability to support them, whether it's to give them advice on their tariff structure, whether it's debt collection, whether it's maintenance on their site. I think you did touch on that earlier. However, there's also those that are able but are unwilling to pay, and those are hoping that there would be some the interventions that are currently on the go will give us some meaningful progress. Our view is that unless there's a fundamental restructuring of the businesses, the electricity businesses within the municipalities, that this challenge will remain. The electricity distribution industry, it has to be addressed or restructured in a way that will ensure that the municipalities are able to service their debt. Our view is that the fact that we do not have ring-fenced electricity businesses within the municipalities, that creates some some challenges within the municipalities themselves. I think lastly, the issue of electricity theft, it's not only an Eskom phenomena, it's also a phenomena that affects municipalities as well, which also makes them to struggle when they have to service their debt. So I think in short, our view is that somehow the whole distribution industry has to be restructured in a way that that ensures the sustainability of the industry itself. The distribution portion with the municipalities as distributors is an important leg of the whole value chain of electricity. So we need to make sure that that portion is also working, because currently we are dealing with load shedding now due to the shortage of the energy in the system. But just down the line, we're going to have to deal with the distribution industry as an industry in terms of the ability of the infrastructure, in terms of the upkeep of the infrastructure. So it is important that we deal with that aspect as well. Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, Monde. Honourable Chair, that concludes our feedback to the matters raised by honourable members in response to our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Group CEO. Honourable members, that's where we are now. I think we have to end the answer and the question and answer comment kind of engagement with the report, and have to end that engagement now and ask or thank our members, our invitees, the Eskom board, the Department of Public Enterprises, and I just want to check before if the minister hasn't come back, because I know we are rushing time, but the minister is back. We can actually ask if the minister wants to say something before we wrap up.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to hold you up, but thank you very much. I've heard through the DPE staff what the committee requires, and we'll try to comply with that as soon as possible. But thank you very much for this opportunity, and thanks to the board and management for being available to you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Minister. That is the end of that agenda item. Can we release Eskom and ask the members to remain so that we complete the business of the day?
Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Goodbye. Honorable members, let's go to the second item, which I think is the minutes of the previous meeting. Can we quickly ask Mr. Mashumi to take us through? Mr. Muchumi?
Yes, Chair. I've got two sets of minutes here, which I will present.
Please go ahead.
One more second, Chairperson. It's the minutes of the 1st of February, 2023, which was the briefing by the DPE on the progress made in addressing the audit findings of the Auditor General on the department and state-owned companies, and also the progress on the BRR recommendations. And these were members who were present in the meeting. The meeting was led, the delegation was led by the Deputy Minister of Public Enterprises. And then just a synopsis of what the department had presented and the discussions of some of the issues raised by the members. And then the resolutions of the department reporting on a quarterly basis on the progress in the implementation of the turnaround strategies for state-owned enterprises. That's a meeting for the 1st of February. And then the second set of minutes, Chair, is the meeting of the 7th of February, which I will flight.
No. Before you continue with the second one.
Okay.
Let's deal with the first set. Members, that's the minutes of the previous session. Can we have anyone to adopt the minute?
Thanks, Chair. Is Mkwanazi. I move for the adoption of the minutes as the true reflection. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mkwanazi. Is there any seconded by Honorable Gumede? Thank you so much. Can we go to the second set?
The second set is the meeting of the 7th, which was a joint meeting with Eskom. This meeting was on the 7th, was a physical meeting at S12A with Mineral Resources and also the Select Committee on Public Enterprises and Communication. These were members of the committee who were present, but on top it does say that we are in a joint meeting. It's only that when we adopt the minutes of a joint, we adopt them separately as committees. However, we have confided in each other in terms of the content. And then opening and welcome of done by the chairpersons, and then the input of the chairperson of the board, opening remarks of the chairperson of the board, and then the briefing of Eskom, led by the group CEO. It's quite lengthy, Chair, because we were three of us who were writing minutes. So these are some of the questions that were raised by the members, very detailed, all the questions and the responses that Eskom has given to committee. And then the resolutions of the meeting that where Eskom has not been able to respond to all the questions posed by members of the committee due to time constraints, Eskom will respond in writing. In Eskom written responses, the following should also be included. And we have listed all the issues that the committee had, the chairpersons had summarized at the end of the meeting. Yeah, that is the meeting of the 7th, Chair, with a joint.
There any second, honorable members? Sorry, any mover? Sorry. Is there any mover of the adoption of the meeting, all of the minutes.
I move Chairperson Honorable Mkwanazi.
Thank you, Honorable Mkwanazi. Is there any seconder?
Chair, I'm out. I second Honorable Phil.
Oh, thank you, Honorable Piri. Honorable members, I think we reached the end. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Muchumi, is there any other item?
No, Chair.
Okay. Honorable members, I think that's the end of our session. Thank you very much. All the best for the day. Let's go to the budget vote. The budget speech. Thank you so much. The meeting is adjourned.